am here to talk about the smoke issue that's been going on in Pro CS. So let me fill you in on what happened. So Taco this morning, I don't know if it was morning or whenever, but sometime today, I think, he tweeted. Let me just quote him to be perfectly accurate with you guys, because I don't want to misquote him, because he started everything, and he brought up an issue about smokes. Let me just find it here. Hey, my lovely ESLCS. I know it must be late, but I have two requests. Number one, make cats allowed again, which is like more of a side. It was sort of a joke, you know, to lighten up the thing he's going to talk about, because it is kind of a serious topic. Number two, ban this radar bind that make it possible to see our opponents on the radar before the smoke fades. The number two is really important. I want real CS, hashtag fair play. Right, okay. So this radar bind does not make it possible to see your opponents before the smoke fades. You can see your opponents before the smoke fades regardless of that radar bind. The radar bind that he's referring to is a bind which zooms in your radar. And by doing that, you can more precisely tell exactly where your opponent is, because rather than looking at the whole map on your little, fucking circle in the top left, you're looking at like a very zoomed in area, right? So let's say you're on train and you're looking like between the two trains. You zoom in the map so that the map only shows like the two trains near you, right? And then you're exactly able to precisely pinpoint exactly where your enemy is, and you can pre-fire him by. And it's a skill. It's a skill to some extent. If you practice it for 10 months or for 3 months or for 5 months, you're going to be good at it, right? You're going to be good at it, and you're going to be better at it, and you're going to have an advantage over your opponents. Everyone can use it. So if you are on one side of the smoke and another person's on the other side of the smoke, obviously both players can use this feature. So there is no unfairness directly. However, I believe that it's disingenuous and ruins, as Taco said, fair play. That some people knew about this feature and were able to prepare for this feature for 3 months or 5 months, and others weren't. This, like, obviously, it the people who knew about it, like, everyone knows that enemies show up a bit quicker on the radar. It's people who had the idea of abusing this that are an advantage. And at the core, I'm not saying this as a bad thing, I promise. Like, by abusing, I don't mean to like imply anything or something like that. I I I just mean that they've learned to abuse it. And to me, because not everyone knew about it, it sort of ruins the major, because like you just have this one trick, and it's just something that's not intuitive, right? And therefore most CS players wouldn't think to use it. And now a lot of players have picked up on it, and in the last week, in the last month maybe, I don't know, I'm not a pro player, I wouldn't know how many of them know, how many of them don't know, they have started to incorporate it. And obviously, if you have studied it for 5 months, you're gonna be better than most people. Um, so it is not really fair. In that some people have perfected it more. You can argue on this. That this is just my particular take. I don't claim to be 100% right. This is my take. This is what I want to see the best CS being played out there. Right. So let's talk about how smokes work and how the minimaps works in more details. So smokes, a user posted this on Reddit. His name is Takefi, Takeethi. He posted this PSA. This is how the radar works with dissipating smokes. Smokes have three stages. First, they bloom. Then they have a main phase where you can't see shit through them. Then they dissipate. In the bloom, it is instantaneous. The bloom is instantaneous, and presumably during that bloom, yes, you can see enemies on the radar through the smoke, but the bloom is nearly instantaneous, so it doesn't matter that much. Plus, you're not really peeking in a spot that you're gonna smoke before you smoke it, right? It's just gonna get you killed. Then there's the main phase, which the radar treats as solid. So the smoke, I think, lasts 17 or 18 seconds. Probably for about 14, 15 seconds, the smoke is solid for the most part. And then it dissipates in like 2 or 3 seconds. Don't quote me on the times, it's just an estimate, right? It's just an estimate. For about 2-3 seconds, it dissipates, and in that point, the radar does not treat the smoke as something solid. It treats it as completely transparent, and the minimap shows you exactly where your opponent is if like you're looking in his general direction. Just like it would show you where the enemy is if you're looking at him without any smoke being in your way. However, the smoke on your screen dissipates gradually. Over 3 seconds, there is a gradual dissipation, right? So it goes from 100% opacity to 0% opacity in those 3 seconds. So let's say it's at 98% opacity at like 2.9 seconds or something. You can see your opponents clearly on the minimap when you don't see them from your POV. That is why I disagree with. I disagree with that. I think it is vitally deteriorating to gameplay because CS, yes, it's about having the mental awareness, the presence of mind to think, oh, let me look at my radar to see where my enemy is. But it's also about like skill, about your eyesight, about like being able to see through a smoke, about like seeing the smoke dissipate in front of you and being able to check all the spots, right? So like let's say you're looking well, what would be a good example? Let's say you're retaking B Inferno and they have thrown a smoke, the terrorists have thrown a smoke on CT to counter you coming in. If you're waiting for that smoke to dissipate, maybe you're standing in a position where you can see new box, where you can see dark, where you can see uh maybe he's hanging behind fountain, oranges, second oranges, you know? There's like maybe 4 or 5 positions that you need to check right. And this smoke is dissipating and you have to use your right side to as soon as possible check the first position, second position, third, fourth, fifth, right? You have to check all the positions and that's skill. That's being able to check all these positions. And if you're quicker than your opponent, you're gonna spot him first and you're gonna kill him. Obviously, this is a bad idea because your opponent is only looking at one position in that particular case. So he's only got one position to check and he's gonna be focused on it. Maybe with an open, he's gonna kill you first. But you get my point. You get my reasoning for why I think in general this is a good concept. The smokes working that way is good. Now, uh Taco's proposition was banning this bind which allows you to zoom in your radar so that you can spot exactly where your opponent is. Now, many people said this doesn't solve anything, this doesn't solve anything. Well, yeah, but nothing solves anything beyond Valve fixing this. There is no way to solve this issue beyond Valve fixing it tomorrow in time for the major, which is not going to happen. If you want to live in that utopia, go ahead and say, I want the perfect solution. But this is known as what is it? Fucking, there's this argument that, like, we shouldn't make aeroplane engines just because they're not the fastest, right? They're not 100% efficient, they're not 100% fast, so why even bother making aeroplane engines when they're not 100%? Because we can fly. That's the point. Yes, it's not the best. It takes fucking 10 hours to get from New York to London, but guess what? It works. You know, it's not the perfect solution, but it works. Similarly, removing this bind and forcing players to not use this bind sort of addresses the issue. Now I understand that players may just decide to use the map zoomed in, but guess what? If they're using the map zoomed in all the time, it means that they cannot see the whole minimap. It means they cannot see where their teammates are. So they're giving up something to gain this advantage. Or many players, and I believe the majority of the players who are currently using this bind, will just decide will be deterred from using this thing. If they're like, oh, I have to give up my minimap. No, I'm used to playing with my minimap. I'm used to checking it. It's going to affect my game worse if I decide to play with the minimap zoomed in than if I play with the minimap zoomed out. I'm just gonna play with the minimap zoomed out. And guess what? It fixes the issue for the next 5 days, right? Until perhaps players, I don't fucking know, they figure something out. Maybe they will, maybe they won't figure something out. I don't know. I haven't thought about this, whether there's a way to work around. But to the extent that I know, there is no way to work around that, right? If you want to see the smokes with the minimap zoomed in, like you just don't see the rest of the minimap. So I think that's a good compensation for the players who want to still use it. Um, I think it's a good thing to consider, and I'll talk about it here. What would be the perfect solution then? Okay, so we can Valve one make changes to incorporate the perfect solution, but what is the perfect solution then, Vinci? Well, here's the perfect solution in my opinion, and I think this solution solves everything. So let me just read another part of this PSA by Takefi about why making smoke solid throughout the whole phase is bad. So Actually, I'm not gonna. It's a really long post. It will take time for me to find exactly where he said it, and he actually talks about it for quite at length. But basically, his point is, if the smokes are always treated as solid throughout the three stages, so you're never able to see anything on your minimap, then players will just. There was this thing about a year ago where players were complaining that some other players knew about settings which allowed them to see through smokes quicker than other players and all that shit. Um, and that's a problem. Admittedly, that's a problem. In my opinion, it's a smaller problem than this current problem right now because it massively shifts the meta, right? This thing here massively shifts the meta. The thing with the settings, it yes, it gives an advantage, but it doesn't change the gameplay to such an extent. And perhaps there's an argument to be made that it's unfair to some players, therefore it's better to have one over the other. Again, in my opinion, Taco is on the right lines. I'm more sad with Taco than the other people, but that's just my opinion. I'm giving you the information so that you can form your own opinion. I'm trying to explain why I think my opinion is right to help you understand and perhaps disagree with it for the right reasons, rather than just spam, oh, Taco's a complainer, oh, Taco this and that, fuck Taco, he's a piece of shit, he should adapt to the new. Right. So, sorry, I deviated from my initial. Oh yeah, that was my initial point. So, um, we cannot just remove being seen on the radar behind smokes, because then that causes the whole issue with perfect settings, which is a perfectly valid issue, and they are both big issues. And if it's possible, they both should be avoided. And that's exactly what my solution does. I Here's my proposition for how smokes should work, in that it fixes both problems. So rather than three stages, have four stages. The first stage, still as before, bloom. Keep it exactly as it is, almost instantaneous. And yes, you can see your opponents for a certain phase during that during that phase, but it's instantaneous, so it doesn't matter. Second phase is the main phase. Again, lasts about 13, 14, 15. I don't know exactly how many seconds. I don't know. It lasts for however many seconds it lasts. Exactly the same. Treat the smoke as solid through that time on the minimap. You can't see players behind that smoke. Um, Now, for the first stage is my proposed stage, and this is the transition phase. I've called it the transition phase because during that phase, it lasts about 3 seconds, and during that phase, the smoke changes. So the smoke is usually gray, right? It's like a sort of darkish gray. I propose that, and at that point during the main phase, the smoke is 100% opaque. I propose that the smoke still stays 100% opaque during the transition phase, but it changes color to a slightly whiter gray. So it doesn't change opacity, and it lasts 3 seconds, and it only changes color. This gives an indication that the smoke is about to expire and that it's about to dissipate. And it also doesn't allow for any settings to see through it, because it's 100% opaque, therefore you can't see through it. For the same reason that without whatever settings, you can't see through walls. You'd need wall hack for that. Similarly, through the smoke, by the same logic, you will not be able to see through it regardless of your settings. So that's my proposed phase, 3 seconds. And the fourth phase is the dissipation phase, which I will change in some way. So right now the dissipation phase lasts about 3 seconds. For again, I don't know the numbers, don't quote me on that, but I'm giving you a rough idea. So about 2-3 seconds maybe. I'm saying make that stage last a half a second. And during that stage, the smoke goes from 100% opaque and slightly changed color due to the previous stage. So from 100% opaque, in that half a second, it goes to 0% opaque. Almost instantly, right? Maybe even change the time to a quarter of a second. I don't know. Make it nearly instantaneous. But the idea is that the smoke dissipates very quickly, so that even if you have perfect settings, they don't really have an impact, because the smoke doesn't gradually dissipate from 100 to 98 to 96 to 94 to 92 within, like, within 3 seconds. This happens like 194.0, right? That's it. And you won't be able to, like, check your minimap to see where your opponent is, because that requires you to move your eyes and then refocus. It won't be able to, the graphical settings, the perfect graphical settings, it won't allow such small changes in those graphical settings to, like, have such a big impact as they do over the 3 seconds. So I think overall this would be the perfect solution. If I worked out Valve, this is the solution I would propose. But I don't work at Valve, and even if they come to this solution, which I think is the perfect solution, it won't happen tomorrow, because they, first of all, they have to derive this solution, and second of all, they have to implement it and program it without causing any other bugs. And Valve are notorious for fixing something and breaking something completely different. So whatever happens, this is not getting fixed by tomorrow. And I think the best solution for tomorrow is what Taco proposed. Don't be allowed to change the zoom on your map with a bind. Yes, maybe you're allowed to have it zoomed in or zoomed out, but not both at the same time. Because you can't have the cake and eat it. Either choose to have the cake or eat, that sort of thing. And yes, it causes a disbalance. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, there are counter arguments. If you have a better solution, DM me, bro, because I don't think there's a better solution. If you can propose, I think this solution is better than keeping the system as it is, and some players having an advantage because they knew about a very small thing in the game months before. And you can say, yes, this is a skill, but people complained when GOB used the jump bug. People complained when Fnatic found that boost. And both of these things got fixed. So I think in its core, this is a bad thing to have. And I think the best solution is exactly what Taco said. Remove the bind. Just, yes, it will not solve anything. I'm repeating myself so much. Yet, and I'm promised for the last time, and then I'm ending the video. Yes, it will not solve everything, but it's a very good solution and a very good compromise which forces players, most players, it will force to deter from this. And the players who do use it, maybe it will deter their game in another way. I don't know. But this is my solution. Thank you guys for watching. This is basically the whole drama sorted under one. If you want to go read the tweets, Taco's Twitter is at TacoCS, TACOCS. If you go to his initial tweet, which I read out, a lot of pro players have discussed this issue and they have talked to each other. I suggest going and reading that thread. It's a good read and it will give you a good idea. But I basically summarized the gist of it. Thank you guys for watching so much, and I'll see you guys next time.